tonight on the Cover One Buffalo podcast, you are going to be checking out Aaron and I breaking down the debacle against the Steelers, injury updates, what to expect next against the Chicago Bears. But first, our guys with Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia Worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL. Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, and my technologically sustainable partner, Aaron Quinn. Aaron, how we doing?
Hey, what's going on? I hope I don't bounce out. I am sorry. Nobody was like super mean about it on YouTube or anywhere that I saw specifically, but you could have been. It was pretty bad last week. I don't know what happened, Greg. I have no idea, but I did go on a Reddit sub forum, and I have this little contraption here tonight also to help me out. So I heard that this extends the Wi-Fi signal just enough for the show. So we'll see if this works. Hey. I'm hoping to get through tonight.
Bills Mafia, these are the sacrifices that we're willing to make to bring you the quality content that you need and to make sure that things stay the way that we're looking for. And
I care Aaron's about the quality and the value of the content that we provide to you guys.
Yeah, okay. and we know we have friends who deeply care about our audio quality, and we need to make sure that he's happy too.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So obviously this weekend sucked. It was actually, I take that back.
I was hoping my Wi-Fi went out this weekend, like halfway through that game, to give me an excuse to stop.
So my weekend was actually awesome. My family came into town. We went down. We took in a baseball game Friday night. We spent all day at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which, honest to God, my wife and I
get there.
We hadn't been there. My wife hadn't been there in 30 years. My wife wore the same Bernie Kosar jersey on Saturday that she wore 30 years ago when she went with her grandmother. She had like an old throwback Bernie Kosar jersey, not like
I saw the pic,
a version of it, literally the same jersey she wore 30 years ago because my wife's crazy. And I hadn't been since college, so I hadn't been like 25 years. And when we went back, they have added so much stuff. It is awesome. It is a really cool experience. I actually had to hurry through some things because we had a lot of kids with us. There are a lot of areas. I could have spent like 5 or 6 hours there just going through all the different stuff. It was a really cool experience. And then I was excited. We got home. My mom made rigatoni and meatballs. This is like my mom's rigatoni meatballs is my favorite meal on earth. And then we're all together, and it's like my entire family, and we're all going to watch the Bills game together. And it starts, and it's a disaster. Like, it was just every possible thing that could go wrong went wrong. And the only thing I could keep saying was, thank God this doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It did suck. It was a terrible experience, but it doesn't have to like mean something. And that's all I can tell myself. Like, it wasn't great, but I don't think it means what some people were trying to tell themselves it meant in the moment, just because it did suck to experience it.
Yes, and we've all felt that feeling in games that matter.
Correct.
Right?
Real games.
That we know that. It's a familiar feeling.
A real game against the Steelers that mattered a lot when we were younger against their backups. That mattered a lot. We've had that experience.
For sure. No. So that feeling is still the same. But yes, it doesn't matter. And here's what I will tell everybody. Straight-faced, real talk. If that was a real game, the Bills would have come back and won that game. Like, as bad as it got, you even saw it in the backups, and Eric Washington spoke to it during his press conference. Like, after things settled in a little bit for that Bills, and we've seen the Bills do that before too, where they come out and it just looks real sloppy real quick. A team gets up and then everybody writes it up and the defense clamps up and things correct themselves. So it didn't feel good because it might be the only time we get to see Josh before the home opener or before the opener here. So that doesn't feel good to see it feel so clunky, but mixed into how bad it felt and looked, like Josh was all right, right? Stephon Diggs looked good.
Oh,
Gabe
that one
Davis,
throw that got called back on penalty was a laser.
correct. Yeah. So the results didn't edge out for you and stuff, but there was still stuff. It's still practice, right?
Yeah.
And so in the practice rep, those throws don't count. They don't produce yards. But we know Josh Allen is still making those throws. He's still being able to get around in the pocket, do those things. Stephon Diggs looked fantastic. Gabe Davis is catching the ball. Kincaid's getting use. Like, it didn't look good, but there was things to take out, even in that first string offense. So that's all I would say to Bills Mafia to take away is don't necessarily look at the results of how it happened. Some of it has to be talked about. And I think when we talk about the defense, we'll talk about what the parts of it that have to really be talked about. But the things that matter the most were fine, right? And those types of penalties hopefully are something that doesn't happen during the season. That's really what made it go kind of off course a little bit in that game, made it feel even worse than it actually was the crazy amount of penalties.
Yeah. So, I mean, 12 in the first half. I was literally like trying to Google if I don't think they keep records by that time frame. Like, they actually had the most in the game, but like 12 and a half had to be damn close to a record. And it, as we kind of transition to, okay, what can we actually tangibly take away from this, both good and bad? One of the, I'll call it good, is that it was so bad that I actually think it gave all of the coaches, not just Sean McDermott, all of the coaches just a mountain of ammo for you think you just need to show up and they're just going to give the game to you. You think that you're the Buffalo Bills and we have this talented roster and all you have to do is walk in the stadium and they're going to bow to you and give you a W. Like, we got to go out and earn it. We haven't earned anything this year. We haven't accomplished anything this year. We've done nothing. This is a brand new clean slate. We haven't done anything. I don't mind that wake-up call came 3 weeks before the first game and not in a meaningful game that could impact, home field advantage or some kind of thing. And again, it wasn't the most important thing. It's not,
right.
It's not all that big of a deal, but it is going to give them that ammo. It is going to be a miserable experience watching the film. It is going to be miserable. You saw some of the things that now, when you had a pre-snap penalty, you had to leave practice and run a lap all the way around the facility kind of thing. And like that kind of stuff, I don't mind that it gave them that ammo now before doing it maybe in a game that really did matter.
My only thing about that, Greg, is I think it might matter more for that coaching staff and some of the guys maybe towards the bottom of the roster that haven't been here. But how many times have we on this podcast said those types of things after tough losses in the regular season over the last 4 or 5 years with key players on this team that were parts of those losses? We say it all the time with Josh Allen, like, kind of sick of hearing those press conferences where it's like, oh, well, this was the one that's going to wake us up. This is the game that we really need to not do this type of thing. And I hear what you're saying,
wrong.
But
I think those responses, it's unrealistic to view them as, oh, it's never going to happen again. They actually do have a pretty good record of not stringing losses together.
Sure.
They actually haven't had multiple like that. So I think there's a little bit to it, but you're right.
How many
Some
years
of that stuff
do you
just
wake
can't
up
do.
calls? Like,
yeah,
they're professionals.
That's fair.
They need to know that you can't be just the Buffalo Bills and show up and that everybody's coming to bring their A game. Like, you've been at the top of this now for a few years. And so I don't know. I don't know if it was just flat or whatever, but the last few times we've seen them, they were fine against the Colts. That's kind of a junk roster right now, but seeing them against the Bengals a year ago and then seeing them now, I can understand why there's that angst of the Bills Mafia and Bills Twitter is feeling like, man, this team just feels flat right now. You wanted to see with the starters a little more pristine execution, and you didn't see it. And I don't know. I just don't want to give them a pass of, like, I agree with you. I tweeted it out that like the coaches are going to be littered with stuff to really rip into these guys. But you hate to be here 3-4 years into being a Super Bowl contender and still be having those conversations.
Yeah. So, and there's one other piece when I mention about that it doesn't. So some people in the moment obviously went to, oh my God, we're going to be lucky to go 500. We're not going to make the playoffs. And I always go to, people remember the press conference, but they don't remember why it was being said. When I say we're on to Cincinnati, you immediately know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When I say we're on to Cincinnati, you can hear it in Bill Belichick's, deadpan, annoyed answer. Do you remember why he said that or where it came from? It's because with Tom Brady as a number 1 seed, they got shellacked for the worst loss in their history of those two together, and then turned the page and went on to win the Super Bowl that year.
Right.
So I just some people apply too much meaning to one thing in a moment, let alone it wasn't even a regular season game that literally didn't matter. So it can suck. It can be a terrible experience, and it doesn't have to be this harbinger of terrible things to come and this bad omen of like, oh my God, what a rough season it's going to be. I actually think it's sneaky was probably okay for them to get this now, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it's preseason, man. Like, what do you want to? You want to have a 35-3 win and celebrate it? Like, yes, that's fun. It would have been more fun if you and your family got to see Josh Allen throwing touchdowns and stuff like that. But it's a glorified practice. And you made this point the other day on a thread that we were on talking about the linebacker position. And we as fans, I know some people have access to get to training camp, but for the most part, fans get a very limited view this time of year at the team, and it's in these reps in a game. And so we probably put too much precedent on what is happening in those very small amount of live reps versus what the coaches are doing all throughout the week. And so like the concern about individual players, and I get caught up in this, right? Like I'm real low on Spencer Brown, and seeing him in that game didn't make me feel any better about the situation with Spencer Brown. But I also don't know what is happening in practice, right? Same thing with the linebacker position. Like I don't know who's really ahead in that position going into it. And so it's hard not to overreact a little bit from the little bit that we see, but we have to understand it's like a 1/8 of the practice that they've been doing this past month is live for us to see in the game.
Yeah, it's tough to relate to, but let's talk about it a little bit here. Let's talk about first some of the things that were concerning. I do think so. One, I'm going to give a little bit of a silver lining. Eric Turner pointed this out in some of his film breakdown, and it was echoed by several other people. The Bills were intentionally taking deeper drops with no extra protection for a reason. We don't know why. They didn't do that at all last year. They always had extra protectors in there. They very rarely had Josh take 7 steps, straight back, deep drops. There was a reason, some kind of evaluation purpose, maybe to see could they do that in a game. I think it was answered for them that probably not. That's probably not going to be
test that out against too.
Probably well. Also, not an accident against a 3-4 with a really good front. I don't know. I hate the idea of they were experimenting and putting them in negative situations purposely, but I don't know that that's completely crazy. I do think that there was a reason that they were doing things they don't normally do. Now, maybe they were hoping to be pleasantly surprised and to find out they have more tools in their tool belt than what they previously had. It confirmed to them they do not. They do not have that in their bag. That is not a club in our bag. And it was because it just showed Spencer Brown is not consistent enough to be isolated out in space. Dion Dawkins had some rough moments, but I'm not concerned. We've seen too much above average play from Dion Dawkins for me to think that he all of a sudden became bad. But like you said, Spencer Brown has been a concern, and he did nothing to stop that this weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, I beat that dead horse all spring long of just wanting insurance at that position. And I think that now that you're here with whatever insurance that you thought you had retired, and then the insurance beyond that is out for the season now.
Yeah, Tommy Doyle out for the year. Brandon Shell retired. Brandon Shell looked like he was slightly ahead of David Quessenberry. We're now people are now asking questions about how good we think Ryan Vandemark is, who is a UConn UDFA who was on our practice squad for most of last year. Yeah. And now
Greg's we're trying to find maybe some trades to get Bobby Hart back. Like that's how bad this is.
Shut your dirty mouth. You shut your dirty mouth. I got yelled at because I had the audacity to present, hey, would you trade Khalil Shakir to the Arizona Cardinals for Josh Jones? Josh Jones is a 3rd-round pick who's the same age as Spencer Brown and who started and was pretty good and was better than Spencer Brown last year and is the same age, and they just drafted a top 10 tackle. So he's now a backup. That's the kind of thing. He's in the final year of his rookie contract. So Arizona has a franchise left tackle or a franchise right tackle, and they just drafted a left tackle in the top 10. They're probably not going to pay that guy next year. I bet you they'd be willing to move him, and they're not going to move him for nothing. They're not going to move him for nothing. He's a young tackle. They're going to want something. I had the audacity to present my something as Khalil Shakir in a 5th for Josh Jones in a 7th. I said, hey, would you do that? I think that's the kind of thing we need to look for. Oddly, Arizona has a horrible roster, and they probably have the 2 best backup tackles in the NFL somehow because they have him and Kelvin Beachum, who is also pretty good and also – played a little bit better than Spencer Brown last year, and I want something like that. People have talked about Justin Pugh as a free agent. Jason Peters obviously got a ton of attention. I want one of those. I want something that gives me a little bit better assurance than we know David Questenberry's not good. I'm not ready to put my eggs in the basket of we found something in Ryan Vandermark because I don't know if we did yet. It looks promising enough that maybe he's going to – we'll talk next week. We have a little sneak preview of our 53-man roster projection show next week. Maybe he's going to be in the running for that, but I'm not ready to give him the keys for anything.
Do not want him in front of Josh. Yeah.
I would like something. Not that I think someone's going to come in and take Spencer Brown's job from day one because I don't think we're going to trade for that level of guy. But I just listed off 2 names who – at a minimum played better than him last year and at best could step in if he either struggles or gets hurt.
Yeah. I just, that you've got a tall, very large human with a history with a back injury, seemingly, at least from my view, still continuing to struggle with the same things that I thought he struggled with, which is leverage and playing too tall and things like that. And you add in the back injury. It just seems like a bad recipe there while you're trying to protect Josh Allen of having, in my opinion, below average, not adequate play at that position. But then beyond that, you really have nothing right now. I don't know if this is another thing about practice is Ryan Bates, that guy where they feel like any of those street free agents that they can go get now isn't going to be able to step in and know the offense and know what he's supposed to do and be able to do it at a level where they could just swing Bates over there. I'm not sure. But right now, big red flag flashing at that right tackle position, really the entire right side of the line, even though, I know everybody is very happy with the performance of O'Cyrus Torrence so far this summer. And I am too. And I think they have thrown a lot at him, but he's a rookie and he has to play next to Spencer Brown. So for me, no matter how good he is and how well he does his own job, the deficiency that I see in Brown playing next to a rookie also adds to my concern here to this right side of the line. And they're going to see some stuff that they haven't seen yet this preseason that much, where you're going to get stunts and people specifically coming over to that side of the line and lining up their best pass rushers and playing games with those two. And nothing about that makes me feel good. It makes me feel great. So even though Torrance played well in this game, the way Brown is playing and trending for me terrifies me about that right side of the line, Greg.
So let's talk a little bit about the good on offense before we go to the bad. And I'm going to count O'Cyrus Torrence in the good.
Yeah.
I think right now and maybe forever, I don't know, he's always going to be a better run blocker than pass blocker. He is a legitimate road grader as a run blocker because he's a ridiculously wide, powerful human with huge, enormous hands and strength. So, of course, he's going to be a good run blocker. And I think he's a slightly better pass blocker than I expected because I was worried about, I was fearful of slow Cody Ford feet. And I think we've at least confirmed we don't have that. We don't have the cement blocks where oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. But he's never going to be typewriter feet. He's never going to be, some super crazy nimble guy. So, quick defensive tackles who can burst off the edge. That a couple guys got his edge a couple times. He never gave up any legitimate pressure. He never forced Josh out of the pocket. He had a couple ones that were it wasn't a win, that they got one over on him in the game, but he was good. And right now, out of a rookie, where that's all we're hoping for is good, is that, hey, we think we might have something here. And then he's really, really good in the run game. He is a legitimate mauler in the run game. That's fun. That's a cool idea. I like having that because honestly, Spencer Brown's still pretty good in the run game.
He's good in the run game.
Yep. So, hey, we might have something off the right side there. Let's see where we go. Connor McGovern looked good. He's the opposite. Yep. He is a very good pass blocker and is fine in the run game. He's okay. And he was that. He was good. He didn't get beat. He was looking good there. Mitch Morse was himself. And Dalton Kincaid just continues to show us that we look like we hit on something pretty good here, and had a couple really just smooth moves. Another one where the moment he saw the linebackers leverage go outside, he gave him a little head fake, cut back in, had multiple nice catches. He did have one of the penalties, so I'm sure he heard about that one, but that made me feel good. Trent Sherfield made me feel good, had a really nice play. Justin Shorter made me feel good and had his best game as a receiver and looked better in special teams reps. I'm sure he heard about it after the previous game. So Justin Shorter was a little bit of an arrow up guy for me. So I was at least happy that amidst some pretty terrible play, we could at least sift out and find a couple good things on offense.
Yeah, no, I think it was mostly good outside of penalties, and then there's a difference between pre-snap and post-snap penalties. Sure. And some of that's just also the refs are in preseason too. They are also going through that process.
Yeah, so the one illegal block above the waist is only called if you hit him from behind. His head was in front.
Didn't look like it. Yeah,
that shouldn't have been one, and that took away a pretty big play. The same thing took away a pretty big play on the Gabe Davis one. Both of those were kind of ticky-tack, but they didn't have 12 ticky-tack ones.
No, for sure. It was sloppy, but I think when you're watching just the plays and not necessarily looking at what was the penalty on this play or something like that, I think most of the time it was mostly good. You saw some good things. Again, Stephon Diggs looked Diggs. Gabe Davis was catching the ball, looking good. Like, those things are positive signs. Added in Kincaid. One comment I want to make on that, Greg, I was excited for that pick. I'm excited for that role. I'm all on. I don't need his position to have a title. Like, let's just utilize this guy as a weapon. But I was a little bit pumping the brakes on rookie integration and production at that position. I'm done. There's no pumping the brakes. It's all gas, no brakes for Dalton Kincaid this year. He's just shown he can step right in and be a productive pass catching weapon in the NFL. I think that he's going to smoothly transition into this offense and be just one of those guys that we consistently rely on. So really happy with how he looked there. Sherfield, as soon as he made that catch, I was like, dude, can we please stop talking about Andy Isabella and talk about these guys that aren't there? These bottom of the roster dudes we're wasting time talking about aren't even going to crack because Sherfield. And we haven't even seen what Deontay Hardy can really do.
The one little screen got called back. There was another nice one where he was wide open.
Getting him involved in a game plan is going to be something you're going to have to see through a 4-quarter game. And how do we utilize that chess piece and stuff like that? So there's some excitement baked into the little bit that we saw of, man, like, if Josh gets clicking and he gets a little protection and maybe they bring in some of that help that you said that, that we were saying they didn't have that protection help, like, this could be a really potent offense that just moves the ball down the field. You can see it even though the results weren't there. So happy to see that the offense has some of that going. The most important people were clicking.
Yeah. So Brian, his comment here almost made me laugh. Nick Wright had brought up the loss of Roger Saffold as a reason that the Bills should be doubted this year. So that made me laugh when Brian brought that up. And I know earlier we had a question about whether we should be more concerned about the chatter about Dion Dawkins. I'm not worried. He didn't look great. He didn't. So I'm not going to try to defend him that he looked great. It was also his first time out there in a while. And, I don't know that. Don't get me wrong. I think Dion gets a hard time because his frame isn't naturally athletic. He is a really big, heavy guy, but he has been since he first got here. He's had a big belly and has been kind of flabby since the moment he got here, and he's played really, really good football while looking like that the whole time. He also probably plays himself into shape a little bit. He probably does. Like, it is what it is. I'm not overly concerned with it. We've seen too much. We've seen 7 years where almost all of them were pretty good football. I'm just not worried about it. I don't think that's going to be a concern. I'll keep an eye on it, but I'm not worried long-term about him nearly like I am some of the other spots.
Yeah, no, I mean, every time I talk about Spencer Brown this week, I've gotten people in my mentions saying, well, Dawkins. And that's my reply is like, I've seen it from Dawkins. I've seen it at not just a high level. I've seen him play at an elite level in this league. And in big games, he's played well. Is it always consistent? No. Is he always at an elite? No. I think he took a step backwards over the last year, but I don't think it's a drop. I don't think he's falling and trending in the wrong way.
Yeah, and plenty of that was how horrible Roger Saffold was next to him.
For sure.
I think once him and McGovern build some chemistry together and you have another younger, more athletic guard next to him, correct, I think we're going to see perfectly good. And at 29 years old, Dion Dawkins is still plenty good.
Yes. And again, preseason should favor defense and sacks. Look, the Bills defense is also getting a lot of sacks in the preseason, right? They've had multiple sacks and all these different rotations. It's not designed to scheme a blocking scheme. And I'm not a Brandon Thorne, so I'm not going to get into the intricacies of blocking schemes. But going into a week, how you handle a TJ Watt, how you handle Hayward and things like that along that Pittsburgh line isn't going to be just line up and go and block and do it like they did this past weekend. There's going to be stuff that's built into how they handle those pressures, how they handle passing things off. And they're not doing that right now. Right. So there's some of that built in here too, that there isn't a game plan specific to the opponent. I trust Dion Dawkins more times than not. So I'm not, if that play continues into the season, sure, I will be concerned, but I haven't seen any reason that he won't be ready and won't play at the level that we've seen.
So real quick, Titan here. I didn't bring it up when I talked earlier about the isolation that they put him in the 7-step drop with no extra help. The answer to that is it's because I think we will see plenty of 12 personnel. I think we will see so if they run 22 personnel, which is the fullback and 2 tight ends, it's really a 3 tight end look. And we saw plenty of snaps this week where Reggie Gilliam was the guy, especially since Dawson Knox was out, he was the guy next to the tackle with his hand in the dirt as a full tight end, like not even a hybrid, not even an H-back. He was like the inline, tight end right there is what do they call that? Darn it. I'm drawing the blank. I know the F tight end is the move tight end. It's going to make me crazy. But they had Gilliam there as that guy in line next to the tackle, and that was the position there. And I think we will see way, way more of that, especially with Dawson Knox back next to Spencer Brown as an extra blocker as we go. Let's switch to the defensive side of the ball. Again, some of the score, don't get me wrong, I don't love that Jordan Poyer took a bad angle, but I'm not overly worried about him. I am a little nervous about some of the linebacker play. We saw A.J. Klein get an equal amount of snaps with the first team as what Terrell Dotson did, and then we saw Dotson playing into the fourth quarter. I'm not ready to say that Dotson completely played himself out of the first-string job, but he hurt his chances a significant amount in this game, and I know we're going to get to it in the injury update, but we saw Terrell Bernard back in pads and going through drills look like he's awful close to practicing again. That linebacker job, I think it's not crazy that it's AJ Klein until Terrell Bernard is healthy enough to do it. And I don't know that anyone we have on the roster is going to be a starting caliber middle linebacker by anyone's definition. And I know a couple people here, I think here Joseph was asking, can we trade, I don't know if it's Elam or anybody for a linebacker. Same idea as with tackle. I'm going to poke around, but most teams are not trading starting caliber people. I know somebody was also asking if we have others wear the green dot. We have had other teams do that with outside linebackers and safeties. I think I went through and counted. I think it was 28 out of the 32 teams. Their middle linebacker is the guy that wears the green dot. That's the most likely scenario. It's not required, and McDermott did talk about the fact that he's open to it, but his preference is that the middle linebacker wears it because it's the easier thing to call the defense. But linebacker, right now I've pretty much just reserved myself that it's going to be the lesser of evils, and that I just hope Terrell Bernard's good enough not to be a problem.
I'm so frustrated by this entire position group. I knew Dotson wasn't the guy to be the starter, even though I hoped maybe the development over the years. I think he's a fine rotational backup. He can do both things in a pinch if you need to get through a game, something like that. That's fine. But man, rolling into the season with AJ Klein feels a little bit terrible to me. And it's nothing against AJ Klein. I like him. He just doesn't present the athleticism you need in the modern NFL. Josh Allen on Bussin' with the Boys talked about what they do when they see a white linebacker on a running back in coverage. They call a milk check. Like it's real. It's going to be a problem in coverage. Dotson will also be a bit of a problem in coverage. I think I agree with you that my hope at this point is that the athleticism that Bernard presents gives you enough that at least in coverage, you can gain back some of what you lost in Tremaine Edmonds. You're not going to get that back, but that it's not a huge drop off in the athleticism and the ability to cover and to play the type of zones that McDermott wants to run. Bernard also can blitz. I think McDermott's also going to be much more aggressive, and having that type of fast, athletic linebacker provides you more of an advantage. So at least on paper, this is sort of the Kaiir Elam argument. On paper, I'm rooting for that athleticism to win out this job. And so hopefully he gets healthy. He couldn't have gotten hurt at a worse time when this position is just wide open and everyone seems to be just essentially trying to lose the job a little bit in Dotson's case, and just steady enough and veteran-y enough to be the default option. If you're AJ Klein, just hoping to be the default option, Bernard has a real opportunity here to just be the guy that's athletic enough to say, hey, we're going to roll with this instead of the vet.
Yeah. And, there's a couple pieces to it that'll be interesting. I know, some people I think feel, I don't think there's any. Nikki here was saying that Dorian Williams is 100% in the future. I mean, he could be.
Maybe.
I don't have any reason to believe he's any better than Terrell Bernard. They were both small school projections from outside linebacker, maybe that could work out at middle linebacker. I haven't seen anything especially in coverage. I think Dorian Williams is probably as good or better than Bernard at coming downhill, running, playing against the run. I don't honestly really care about run defense. If I have to pick one, I care more about pass defense, because guess what wins in the NFL? Mm-hmm. Pass offense. And passing offense is hard to stop. So whatever it is, and here, using dime more often is now becoming more and more interesting as we go forward. I've inched up from 5% to 10% to, hey, maybe now we run dime 20% of the time. I think that's a possibility as we go here, but I don't have any reason to believe. I haven't seen anything that puts Dorian Williams even equal with Terrell Bernard yet. I still think Terrell Bernard, I said it going in, I think he's our most likely one. I was kind of hoping that Dorian Williams would show things because I know some of the frame and wingspan. He's the same thing, not to the level as your comment earlier with Kaiir Elam. People don't want Kaiir Elam. People want the idea of what they told themselves Kaiir Elam was going to be. People don't want Dorian Williams to play. People want the idea of what they told Dorian Williams could be. He hasn't been that. He's not ready to be that. He might never be that. Maybe he will. Maybe he'll develop. We'll give him time and find out. But right now, he's not that guy. Just like I have been as adamant as anyone about wanting Kaiir Elam. Well, guess what? He hasn't played like I hoped he would. He certainly hasn't played nearly to the ceiling that I hope he created. So I have to accept that he just hasn't been that guy. I can't project what I think I wanted him to be as an option because it's not. That is not on the table right now. So whether that's Kaiir Elam, whether that's Dorian Williams, whether that was Balin Spector, we have to put the guy out there who is ready to play and to be our best available option. And right now, that's AJ Klein until Terrell Bernard's healthy, and then we have to just hope that Terrell Bernard can hold it down and be good enough.
Yeah, I think some of it that I'm leaning into, just trying to mentally get myself into how is this going to work. Say it's AJ Klein, right? Or even if it is Bernard, because there's going to be some flaws that come with playing a guy like that, is can this scheme hide one real big deficiency like that? We know in the past they've been able to hide some athletic deficiency at cornerback too, right? They still produced one of the best passing defenses in the NFL, having Levi Wallace and Dane Jackson out there playing cornerback. They've been able to do that. Can they do it in the middle of the field where they've had maybe one of the biggest, most athletic linebackers in all of the NFL for the last few years, roaming in the middle, and now you're going to either AJ Klein, who just doesn't have that type of athleticism, doesn't move in that way, is much more of a traditional linebacker. And then you're going a smaller sort of Milano clone, I guess, really it almost becomes like positionless linebacker, even though the responsibilities are of a middle linebacker. You're going to have flaws, and the scheme is going to need to adjust for that. And it's how much do you believe in the scheme, right? Can McDermott really find a way to get AJ Klein in pass coverage in a modern NFL against a modern NFL offense and not be a huge where people are just picking on him type of scenario? Because that's how I see it. If I'm an offensive coordinator or if I'm a content creator for the Jets and I'm looking at this defense, I'm just attacking that middle of the field. And that's all I'm talking about the week ahead of time is, God, they got this guy AJ Klein out there. I'm not going at Trey White. I'm not going at the safeties in the middle of the field. I'm going to get this guy.
Not going to Taron Johnson.
Yeah, I'm just going to pick on this one guy, and I'm going to run at him, and I'm going to pass at him all day. And I can't remember a time where I felt that way right now with the type of defense that we've had, even when it's been Levi and Dane. I've never felt like, man, someone's such a vulnerability that we're just going to get caught up and just be chasing our tail. And right now, I feel that way about the middle linebacker position.
Yeah, I think that we have to see. We'll find out and see. They schemed around some of those deficiencies over the years at cornerback too. They've
even
been
last
able
year
to
at
scheme
safety
around it. Yeah, they've schemed around it. At safety, we couldn't do some of the exotic looks that we could previously do with Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. Now we have those guys back. So we're gonna have to see. We're gonna have to see where it goes. We're gonna see what it allows us to do. We have some more versatile pieces now. Having guys like Taylor Rapp and DeMar Hamlin as our third and fourth best safety is a valuable thing. We have a deeper defensive line. We can do some different rotations. We have more outside cornerbacks. We have depth at a lot of places except for middle linebacker. So we're going to see what they do with that and where it goes. But as Joe DeRosa here, make sure you guys are checking out Joe with his awesome show on Saturdays. Make sure you're giving him a look. It's a lot of fun. But it's something where we're going to find out what they can do with that D-line, creating a little bit more havoc in front of them, hopefully keeping those guys clean and letting them play.
Yep.
Anything else that stood out from you on defense before we move on?
No, I'm ready to not ever talk about that game again.
Good. Let's throw that in the garbage. Before we go on to our next topic, first, we want to share with you guys a lot of the good things that we have going on over at Cover One. Make sure you guys are taking a look to be able to support what we have going with our OnePass program. It is the best way to be able to help us out and to be able to show your support for what we do. You get access to everything that we do across all of our different devices. You're able to check out things like my Salary Cap 101 series. Eric did his glossary series, learning what all the different things mean and everything that's there. And I know, Aaron, you're a huge fan of the community that we've built with Cover One.
Yeah, the Cover One Slack community is fantastic. I have been kind of stirring the hive a little bit on the Dane Jackson stuff, so I apologize for getting it worked up here over the last week. But it is a great place. Like I always say here on the podcast, no matter what time of day you can go in there, there's some conversation going, and it's not the types of conversations that sort of really derail on Twitter. It's more of a back and forth, is more of a, hey, let's dive into this stuff. Eric's always posting film, and there's a film Slack room, and there's a general Slack room just for having conversations and connecting with Bills fans. So it's really become more than just a bunch of super film geek analytic nerds all talking just Bills all the time. It's really just a constant flowing of cool Bills fans that just kind of want to hang out and chat and not necessarily be on Facebook and not necessarily spend all their time on Twitter like sickos like myself. And so they come to the Slack channel and they get all their news there. And a lot of the times it really is becoming an insider, because we're not a breaking news source place, Greg.
Okay.
Like, we don't hang our hat on being those guys that are coming out to try to break news. But we do get it, and our Slack members get it. And there's so many times where stuff hits the Twitter universe there, and everybody's reacting like it's news. And all of our Cover One Slack members already knew it. They already knew what was going on, and they were getting it first. So make sure that you're getting that type of access, the information, the data, all the things that we get. We share it in the Slack channel before it goes out anywhere else. And so that is why you will become an insider, and also contributing. People ask us all the time, Greg, what can you do to help? Yeah. This helps me pay for the internet. It helps me get better internet so I can help you guys and be here consistently for you and not be in a super annoying show. So please provide my internet for me.
all of the different things that we do, all of our subscriptions, all of the different services where we have all of our data and information and news. You also get this awesome t-shirt and a decal, all kinds of other cool stuff. All that for $60. Make sure you check it out. Give us a shot. It really means a lot, and it's the number one best way to support us.
Yes.
So one real quick one, I think Brian made a really good point here as we were kind of criticizing Elam. Criticizing Elam's play and how the coaching staff has used him are completely valid. Acting like Elam is a massive bust and draining our cap situation is crazy. It is too early for that. I do think that there is time to still evaluate that. It's not off to a good start. He should be criticized because he can't keep his hands to himself. But that doesn't mean that he can't develop beyond there. He still has some elite tools. We'll see where that goes. But right now, he's shown he's not ready to be that guy yet.
Yeah, there's just not a reasonable conversation going on in the world about cornerback too. And we were talking about this a little offline where it's like, to your point, the expectations of that people placed on Elam to live up to who they wanted him to be in the defense after losing to Kansas City in that way and needing speed and athleticism and wanting it so bad. You finally get it. You wanted it part of this defense. But then like that also somehow became Dane Jackson totally sucks and doesn't deserve a job like at all. And it's just, there's not a reasonable conversation to be had about the coaches suck. They don't know how to use them. He's the next greatest thing. We're just holding him back. Like I don't know. I'm trying hard to find a reasonable conversation. It's okay for him to be just a good corner. He doesn't have to be Trey White for it to work out for the Buffalo Bills. Bust is too soon. We just signed
disappointed
Leonard Floyd.
so far. Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
a great example. It's a great example. Leonard Floyd was, by most people's definition, a bust in Chicago, and then went on to have a really nice career for multiple more years, producing the 10th most sacks in the league over the last 3 years. Like that's a thing of a guy who was written off. And if you asked your brother, Chicago fans, they would have told you, no, that guy's a bust. He's never going to be anything.
They were having the same conversations. The staff isn't using him right. We got to get him in this situation. We need to do this.
Yes. So we'll see. And I'm just as guilty as anyone else out there. The idea of what I wanted Kaiir Elam to be is better than Dane Jackson. Yeah. That doesn't mean Kaiir Elam has ever been better than Dane Jackson, because he's not. He hasn't yet. He has not done that yet. To this point, Dane Jackson is better, and until that changes, he's going to play.
Yeah, that's and it. I got, like, I hate to sound like that fan that's like, I know this, but covering this team and covering Sean McDermott, adequate cornerback play is hard to find on a consistent basis, and the coaches want to take consistent adequacy much more than they want to take the peaks and valleys of sometimes it's elite, sometimes it's really chaotic. And so they're going to go with that steady hand, and a steady hand is real tough to beat out for a starting job when you just don't have the consistency yet.
Yeah. Our next topic here, we have some people were asking about Connor McGovern. His official injury is a knee. I haven't seen anything concerning about
he didn't leave the practice.
Correct.
Right?
He was still there watching. Yeah, just went off to the side, had a sleeve on. I think they did some compression. So there's a chance he tweaked a little something there, but it did not seem serious. Same idea, Matt Barkley. I know there were some initial concerns about a UCL or something, more serious, even beyond what Josh had. Right now, it seems like that's not the case. But he still did not practice today. Depth running back Jordan Mims, Khalil Shakir, it's reported his ribs. I think that can be more serious than some people think sometimes. That can be a concerning one, given Leonard Floyd a rest day. Terrell Bernard was listed here as not participating. I know Sal Capaccio, he reported that Terrell Bernard was participating. I saw pictures of Terrell Bernard with a full uniform and pads on and a helmet doing drills. So I don't think he did team drills, but I think he was pretty darn close to participating and seems a matter of days away from full participation. So I would say from an injury standpoint, obviously, Tommy Doyle is a very, very sad situation. We've had, we came into camp with, losing Nyheim Hines. We have not been, spared from any injury things, but to this point, knock on wood.
You better not kiss that mahogany of yours.
We have been fairly fortunate from an injury standpoint, and I think all of these are manageable, and Von Miller looks closer. Von Miller was out there today with his knee brace on, with full padded football pants on, and I think he had a can of dip in his pocket. It looked like it was kind of weird. That grosses me out, but I was like, is that? I think I think
a lot of football players did.
A can of tobacco. That's weird.
Yeah.
But he was going through drills with a knee brace on, with full football pants and football leg pads in. So he looks like he's getting closer and closer. We'll talk about that next week with our 53-man projection, whether we think that's going to matter now or later. But are there any injuries here that you're overly concerned with?
No, to your point.
I guess McGovern's knee, making sure that it's not something serious, I guess.
Yes, that would be a concern if that came. Right now, the vibe check from Twitter, when I saw it, I got real nervous. And then it seemed to, at least right now from the beats reporting, maybe not like the Bills, like you said, compression sleeve, maybe it's just a tweak or something. We'll find out more, obviously. Yeah. The only thing that's really concerning here is how some of these battles shake out, right? Khalil Shakir.
Yeah. Terrible timing for Shakir. Terrible timing.
Tough. Throws a little bit of a wrench into that sort of, hey, is it going to be Isabella? Is it going to be Shorter? We just talked about Justin Shorter having a big game. We spoke about him. We didn't speak about Isabella. So how close is that race at practice? And where does Shakir land in that race? And where was his role? I think we talked a lot about that here over the past couple of weeks. So seeing him get hurt, you hate to see a guy not be able to be out there and competing for that final spot if they are in competition for it. Bernard is the same way. The trending up sounds good. Hamstrings can be real weird and tweaky and day-to-day type stuff. So let's see how he comes back. But every day he's not out there, I'd love to get a look at him this weekend if we can see him in some game action to see what it looks like. You were at camp. I didn't get to see him at all really this summer, and to see what that's going to look like. Going to be real nervous heading into the Jets if he's that guy, but he's really got to get here and hurry up fast. The rest of them, not a real big concern. You hope Matt Barkley gets okay just because he's a nice guy, but the performance from both the backup quarterbacks right now is not super fantastic either way, no matter if it's Barkley or Allen. So I don't feel great about the backup quarterback situation. So I'm not going to be nervous if one of them's not on the roster due to injury.
Yeah, I'm not even going to. A couple different friends, I had some different text threads and DM threads with that. It just doesn't matter. Backup quarterback just doesn't matter.
Wait, so we're not trading for Trey Lance?
God. Wait. So I went down the
Is that what it was? Was it a Trey Lance thing?
Yes, it was Trey Lance or Sam Darnold. So one, we're nervous right now because we don't have a good backup. So the answer is, let's go trade for a project who's probably a year or two away from being ready to play, that we have to give up assets for and pay multiple millions of dollars. That's the answer that you want to do. So let's flip it differently. Let's say we even got a Sam Darnold or a Tyrod Taylor or a Jacoby Brissett, like whoever we think are the best backups. You want to know what? I think Kaiir Elam can lead the Bills to beat the Commanders or to beat the Raiders or to beat the Giants. And guess what? So could Jacoby Brissett, Sam Darnold, Tyrod Taylor. Well, guess what? Jacoby Brissett, Tyrod Taylor, and Sam Darnold aren't beating the Bengals or the Chiefs or the Eagles, just like Kaiir Elam's probably not beating the Chiefs, the Bengals, or the Eagles. Like, it just doesn't matter. If we have Josh Allen and he gets hurt for a short period of time, we have a good roster, and if it's a winnable game, we could probably win it. And if it's a really good opponent, we're probably not going to win it regardless of who the backup is. And if we lose Josh for an extended period of time, you're telling me that come playoff time, Patrick Mahomes is going to look across the field and go, oh my God, I can't believe they have Jacoby Brissett. We're screwed. It's not going to matter. If we have Josh Allen, all things are possible. If we don't have Josh Allen, it doesn't matter anyways. I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Of course, if I had my choice, would I prefer that we had whoever the next, say Ryan Tannehill turns into the next Andy Dalton or the next Marcus Mariota? Sure. I would love to have that. Not giving up any draft picks and not paying any extra money. Of course I would prefer that. But I'm not going to give up signing a Connor McGovern, signing a Leonard Floyd, because we wanted a little extra security for a guy who isn't special and won't matter when the time comes anyways. No backup quarterback matters. And the only times it's mattered in NFL history is when the starter wasn't any good anyways and the rest of the roster was helping him win. Jeff Hostetler and Phil Simms, they're both about the same. Nick Foles and Carson Wentz, they're both about the same. It's because they didn't have anything special and the rest of the roster was so good that those backups came in and did a thing.
Frank Wright Are you saying Frank Reich's the same as Jim Kelly? Because I love
that's
that.
exactly
I love
what
that
I'm
take.
saying. Is that Frank Reich
That's
is
fire.
exactly the same as Jim Kelly.
Yeah,
Chris is gonna clip that and get me canceled on Bill's Twitter.
Yeah, right. The other thing is too, like, it's funny because the conversation that was around Mitch Trubisky when he was here and how people thought this was like some elite backup quarterback we had, and when they lost him, people were sad about it. And Mitch Trubisky,
he's fine.
He's fine.
He's better than Kyle Allen, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I wouldn't feel that much better. Like if he's going to play games, the Steelers probably aren't winning that game. He still makes the same mistakes Mitch Trubisky always has. He's still going to be really lacking the ability to be an elite quarterback and get to win a game for you. He's not a QB you can win. He's a QB you can win with, not one you can win because of.
You think Joe Burrow's afraid of Mitch Trubisky?
Right. Yeah, no. So none of this stuff. That's how I feel about the backup QB position. I'm the same way as look at the way the Chiefs have handled it over the years. And Patrick Mahomes has missed games or had been threats of missing big games, and they've had to go play games with terrible backup quarterback play. And you just kind of hope that your team's talented enough.
And don't get me wrong, Chad Henne had a nice drive in 2 different games that mattered.
Yep.
But it's not like they had some sustainable solution. Quick pop quiz. Who is Patrick Mahomes' backup right now?
Today?
Yes, right now. I'll give you 37 guesses.
Is it oh my god, who's the guy that's been just like around the league as a backup?
It's not Chase Daniels. That's a really good answer. It's kind of like a newer version of that who used to hold the clipboard for Tom Brady. It's Blaine Gabbert. And guess what? Blaine Gabbert ain't going to do nothing either. Yeah. And that's just how it works. Guess who Joe Burrow's backup is? It's Trevor Siemian. Right. Trevor Siemian ain't any good. Guess who Philadelphia's backup is? Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota was a disaster in Atlanta last year. If you're a fantastic team and you have a franchise quarterback, you can't afford to have the $8 million backup. The only teams that have the $8 million backup is when you're not sure whether you have a quarterback or not. Because go look, Sam Howell's backup is Jacoby Brissett. That's how that works. That's where those things go. When you have Anthony Richardson, you pay a little extra to have Gardner Minshew. Right. When you have Brock Purdy, you pay a little bit extra to have Sam Darnold. That's how that works. None of the really good teams have really good backups because they know
it's ride or die.
If Joe Burrow goes down, if Patrick Mahomes goes down, if Jalen Hurts goes down, if Josh Allen goes down, our season's done. That's it. Yeah.
Wrap.
The only one, Miami did pay a little extra for Mike White because you want to know what? If I had to, I'd pay a little extra for Mike White too.
Sure. I don't know if it would be for Mike White, but I would pay extra for backup.
Yeah. For something. Yeah, maybe I would have done better than Mike White, but
yeah.
All right, so as a quick preview for next week's show and our 53-man cutdown, we had a couple questions here in the chat, and I got a couple questions today. I think it was so Joe DeRosa hinted that he will wait in the parking lot just for free food. And we had a couple guys here, Charles G. asking, do you think we see any parking lot cuts for vested veterans? So first, before I show the list, this is the thing each year. A couple years ago, it was Andre Roberts. We've had some other ones, Reed Ferguson, 2 years ago. This is when there's a name that's a genuine shock on cutdown day, and we're like, oh my God, I can't believe that guy got cut. And then all of a sudden, the next day, you hear that they got re-signed by the team. And what happened was, there are players that unless you want to put them on season-ending injured reserve, if they got hurt during camp, so I will say Von Miller is different. Von Miller, to this point, has not passed the physical, so he is not physically able to perform because he hasn't passed the physical. Therefore, he's on the physically unable to perform list, which means he does not have to count towards the 53-man roster until he passes a physical. Any other player, like, say, Khalil Shakir, who'd already passed their physical and has been practicing, in order to make it onto the team, they have to make the 53-man roster. Well, they can make the 53-man roster and 1 day later be put on short-term IR. When they get put on short-term IR, they only have to sit out 4 weeks, not the entire season. Then they open up a roster spot because they went on the in-season short-term IR, and you can re-sign that player back. So I've kind of each year started to build a list that I call my here's $25,000 to go wait in the parking lot list. It's kind of funny. They've basically built Reed Ferguson into this guy every year, and he's the perfect situation. He's a vested veteran. They built his contract with 0 dead cap. You bring him in. He has no competition, so he has no actual threat. He's not worried at all about losing his job, because what are the Bills going to go do? Sign another guy that hasn't ever worked with Sam Martin and Tyler Bass to snap? He has no actual concern. The team doesn't have to worry about somebody else poaching him, because no other team is switching their snapper last minute. So they basically found a loophole, and they've built Reed Ferguson's contract like that, where they can release him for one day and then bring him back. Funny enough, my rankings have now changed, because Andy Isabella would be in that situation. I actually checked with Joel Corey, who is one of my go-tos for contract stuff. Also my guy Texans Cap, who works he's at Texans Cap on Twitter. Awesome salary cap guy. He works for Jason at Over the Cap and is one of the guys at Over the Cap who replaced Brad Spielberger, one of my other contacts for salary cap stuff. They confirmed for me, even though it looks like Andy Isabella didn't play enough games last year, he was actually an active player on the roster in week 2, but was game day inactive, and that counts as a game. So he earned his 6 games to be the vested season, which was his 4th season. So he's a vested veteran. He would not have to go through waivers. So in theory, if we had a couple of those injuries and you needed to stash somebody, you could release Andy Isabella, keep Khalil Shakir, put him on short-term IR, and the next day re-sign Andy Isabella and be able to do that. Other names that I think are good enough to make the roster, but would be in the running here. AJ Klein would only cost us $100,000. Ike Bottker was probably borderline. I don't know if he's actually going to make it, but he's on the list too because of the $50,000 there. So that combination puts us into a good spot and gives us some flexibility. So I know a lot of the guys, we've got this question a lot. We'll talk about it next week when we build our 53-man rosters. Reed Ferguson is the easy one. If we have to do it with one person, that's probably it. Maybe Andy Isabella, just because of the nature of where it is and out of respect to Reed, if we only need one, maybe they do it with Isabella, just so the reporting doesn't go out there that we lost a guy that's there and they don't have to explain that, oh yeah, Reed was never actually in risk of doing this. But that's out there every year, and they've now basically made Reed Ferguson a cheat code, and we have a second one with Andy Isabella. I think we have a pretty good shot.
Side note, parents, whether or not you are approving of your kids playing football, if you are, teach them how to long snap. I mean, am I right? Like, if they can be one of the 32 dudes that know how to do it in the world, so good job security.
Quick story. Shout out to Kevin Ferguson. Kevin Ferguson is an awesome guy. I got to spend some time with him at the Senior Bowl a couple years ago when we were down there because his son Blake was snapping at the Senior Bowl, also out of LSU, looking to get drafted. And we sat there talking about it. And of course, both Blake and Reed are big athletic guys. They're not like just some kid. They're both, 6'2" and change, 250, 260, and pretty athletic. Well, 6'2" and change, 250, 260, and pretty athletic doesn't normally make it to the NFL. So, he was really smart. He taught both his boys how to be awesome long snappers. They both got full ride 4-year college educations and now are carving out long NFL careers for snapping a football really good. The man is a genius. Shout out Kevin Ferguson. He is my hero.
I shit you not. I worked at Sears in Brunswick, Maine, and the guy in the back that repaired all the stuff that came in broken, he had his own little repair shop. He was a Cowboys fan, and I used to go and smoke cigarettes with him, and we would talk football. He was like the only guy that talked football, so we sit out there, and he would preach to me, if you ever have a kid, teach him how to long snap. It's the fastest way to get to them. They get paid well. Nobody hits them. It's job security. There's only one of them on a roster. They never get cut. Like, you can have a 12-year career, and it was the most best life advice I think I maybe ever heard.
Dude, Reed and Blake Ferguson are both going to play like 10 or 15 years, be beloved. Just all Reed does is snap footballs and grill steaks. That's all he does. It's a great life. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a nice gig. So, do that. But yeah, the Isabella ones make sense. Somebody else, I don't know, talking about the spinning injuries on IR. If that Shakir one is anything with the ribs, that might be one that just naturally happens with the Isabella thing, and it sort of kills your 2 birds with 1 stone.
Yeah,
I don't know that they're going to trick anyone into being like, oh, hey, you have this thing that needed surgery we didn't do. Let's go do that now.
Yeah, I mean, we don't see that. We've only really seen it with the Bills once. And again, I think before there might have been people who literally fabricated and made up injuries. For the most part, the NFLPA has cleaned that up. One example was Voshon Joseph legitimately had, I think it was a shoulder thing. I can't swear to it. I think it was a shoulder thing. That was a legitimate pre-existing condition that was red flagged during the combine medical exams. And, you know, when it came down to it, was there a little bit of like, hey, Voshon, you're probably not going to make the team. Why don't you go get this cleaned up? Can we just pay you to go get this fixed and we'll kind of figure it out later? It would be naive to think that wasn't a part of the equation. And obviously in hindsight, it's easy to say that because he never ended up amounting to anything. So, you know, don't get me wrong. Is there some pre-existing thing that was red flagged for Justin Shorter and all of a sudden we found out, hey, we think you should probably go get that labrum repaired or whatever it was? I don't think there's anybody like that out there right now that's obvious to me that we would need to do that with. So one, we talked about Khalil Shakir and his rib injury. That is an obvious one where you release Isabella, you put Shakir on the IR for 4 weeks, you keep Isabella, bring Isabella back, and then you deal with it in 5 weeks to see how everything's going. An example would be, let's say we find out there's like a legitimate MCL sprain for Connor McGovern. Sure. Obviously, we know today it wasn't too serious, but it was enough that he stopped practicing. Yep. Let's say they do the MRI and like, hey, this is actually a pretty real MCL sprain. You probably should let it rest for like 4 weeks. That would be the example where all of a sudden you can't release Connor McGovern. You also can't put him on IR because then he's gone for the year. So he's a guy you would need to release Reed Ferguson, keep Connor McGovern and the extra guard, Nick Broker now or Ike Botker now, who makes it instead. They would then, the second day, put Connor McGovern onto IR, short-term IR, and then you re-sign Reed Ferguson the next day, and now you're good. Happy. Yeah, and then week 5, you deal with it again and figure out, hey, are we ready to activate him? Has anybody else got injured at that point? Or now do we release Nick Broker or Ike Bacher or whatever it might be? That's how the mechanisms of that go. Thank God we don't have a ton outside of Khalil Shakir of like roster caliber guys who are also kind of dinged up. I guess if Terrell Bernard's hamstring didn't get better, he'd be another one that would be possible. Or something. Yeah, those are the only ones I can think of.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Unless, hopefully, knock on that mahogany of yours, nothing else comes up here over the next week or two.
Yeah, hopefully.
And hopefully that McGovern one isn't serious. The ribs is always sends a red flag to me because, like I was saying in our DM group of like, even I've had bruised ribs before. And we saw Cole Beasley. Remember that stretch where everybody's like, Cole Beasley lost a step, but he like busted up some ribs or something and played through it.
It was diving to the ground because it hurt.
Yes, and it just legitimately slows you down. So, and it takes time. There's nothing you can do for him. So even if it's just like bruising on his ribs or something, that could be something that takes a little time to heal. And they're just going to say, hey, let's shut it down for now and do this. That would be the one right now to me that flags. And then McGovern, if that goes forward. But these other ones all seem like it's if there was a game this weekend, everybody else is playing type of thing.
Yeah. So Aaron and I are very excited, and if you would like to come and talk with Aaron and tell him what a great job he's doing, or you've always wanted the chance to come tell me what an idiot I am and you want to come yell at me, you can now have the chance to do that in person because we are partnering with our new sponsor, Leftern, to help come join this awesome block party. Leftern has actually been driving the force behind this to get everything set up. They're working through a ton of things. The Saturday before the home opener, Saturday, September 16th from noon to 6 p.m., the 500 block in downtown Buffalo, starting right here at 523 Main Street. We're going to be there all day. And I know, Aaron, we're excited about some of the people who are going to be there.
Yeah, well, I'm mostly, obviously I'm excited about everyone that's going, but there's going to be 10 to 15 Buffalo merchandise companies all bringing different types of stuff. I know my wife probably hates actually hearing that I'm going to go there, and there's going to be 10 to 15 because I see them all on Instagram, and I know
26 shirts is one of them.
Yeah,
Oxford pennant is another one. There's going to be all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, and obviously I'm going to spend a majority of my money there when I'm not podcasting. But Greg, what about you? What do you guys for excitement for?
You'll be shocked to hear I'm excited about the food vendors that are going to be there. I won't lie, I get a little freaked out about some of the pictures online of Macy's Pizza that I see and the crazy things that are there, but I've also never had a chance to try any.
It's intriguing to you, isn't it?
I might try a crazy piece of Macy's Pizza while I'm there. There's also some barrel and brine pickles, some other fun stuff. So I'm excited to be able to see what's going to be there. And I know I'm excited to spend a little bit of time with Greg over at Leftern.
Yeah, and if you haven't experienced Leftern or you don't know Leftern, go online, go find them.
In the show description, you can find it here.
In the show description, one, fun follow just in general on the internet, really good, fun stuff. But the style of shirts and hats and stuff that they are putting out, I think is super cool. It's different than what everyone else does. I've always been drawn to their stuff. Obviously the prints, and we're going to do all the print releases and show you all their different game day prints. I've got some here behind me. Super cool. I get tons of compliments on these now that my garage has been open and people are seeing the prints. People love them. But they're going to have some exclusives just for this event. And I'm excited to see what those look like, because every time they drop something, I'm just hitting up Greg. I'm like, yo, that's so dope. Like, I got to get that. And it's the same thing as the other 10 to 15 apparel people. I'm sure I'll be dropping some of my money. Some of that sponsorship money is going to go right back into Greg's pocket, probably.
I like to think of it as reinvesting.
Yes,
I think it's reinvesting.
I like that. Yeah.
We're also going to have DJ Milk out there, who you know from Bills and Sabres games. They're going to have an ice luge. I'm curious to see how that's going to work. But all kinds of different stuff, and actually have a program that if you go around to all the different vendors and buy, or 7 of them, you can get 7 different stamps, which would be a touchdown. If you get a touchdown, you get entered in to win an awesome gift basket. Part of that gift basket will be a free Cover One OnePass membership that you can either enjoy yourself, or if you're already a OnePass member, you can gift that to someone else in your life. But we're excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. And, hopefully we're sitting there talking about an awesome Bills victory over the Jets and what we can do to get ready for that home opener, where I think the stadium is going to be rocking. And I'm very excited to see it.
I thought that we were giving, instead of the OnePass membership, I thought we were giving people the opportunity to buy you and I a steak dinner.
That is also a viable option. We're actually trying to work that out, because a certain other podcast owes me a steak dinner. We'll work that out.
True.
I'm curious. I'm trying to lobby that now into. I might go to a Sabres game.
It's Drew from the Rockpile Report. If anybody doesn't know, I'll call him out straight up. He owes you dinner.
Drew owes me a very fancy, nice steak dinner, so we'll see if we can work that out. So as we get ready to close here, because even though it's the middle of August and nothing going on, we've still already talked for over an hour. What are you preparing for this weekend? What do you want to see? What do you not want to see? And what are you expecting for this last game?
I don't want to see Josh Allen. I don't want to see Gabe Davis.
I don't know if I want to see anyone that matters.
I don't want to see anyone that matters. I really don't.
Maybe some position, you want to show me a little more Terrell Dotson, Terrell Bernard, a little more Osiris Torrance and Ryan Bates. I guess. Honestly,
Spencer Brown should probably be out there.
Sure, I think give me a series or two.
Yeah, if anyone I don't have confidence in, I think I still want to see. So it would be middle linebacker. Honestly, as much as I hate to hesitate that I'm not standing for Dane Jackson. I think he's clearly the starter. So if they're sitting starters,
doesn't need to play. Dane Jackson does not need to play.
But I'd be okay with everyone in that cornerback position. I actually prefer that he not play, because I want to see more of an extended look at Elam and Christian Benford a little bit. So I'd prefer he not, but I'd let those guys run all day until they show me something. No Porter, no Hyde. Anybody that's a vet that means something to this team, and I want it.
Trey White, Milano, Groove. Leonard Floyd, nobody.
Sitting people, and just letting the bottom of this roster shake out, getting looks at guys that are going to be on your speed dial for calling in season, the constant churning of the practice squad that Brandon Beane does. That's what this game is all about, and seeing what those guys look like. And we don't need to see the rest of it. And so have a clean week of practice, get through this last part healthy. And then, Greg, we really get to ramp into preparing for the New York Jets and getting ready for Monday Night Football. And just talking about it, I'm getting a little bit of goosebumps and getting worked out, because this next week, whatever, we'll come and we'll do content. Not that we don't work hard and try this time of year, but dude, I am just itching to get to the good stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I almost do this game in reverse. So we have 90 guys on the roster. I think it's actually 90 again, because we did make a couple of signs that Garrett McGinn, Ty Johnson. We signed a couple guys to fill it. That linebacker that Kyle liked a lot. I can't remember his name.
Deshaun
something. So Sean something. Yep, you're onto it. So I almost do it in reverse. So we have 90 guys on the roster. You need 48 for a game day roster. So that leaves 42. So immediately we can sit 42 players. So 42 versus 53 means 11 guys who are actually going to be on the roster have to play. They just have to because we got to be able to fill out a team.
AJ Epinesa.
So three of those are Sam Martin, Tyler Bass, and Reed Ferguson because we don't have another kicker, punter, or long snapper. Right. So now we are down to 8. We have 8 other players. And if you're telling me that those 8 players are Boogie Basham and Tim Settle and Ryan Van Denmark, give me some more Ryan Van Denmark play, Shaq Lawson, just start filling in like that we get a little bit. We want to see more Christian Benford and Kaiir Elam. We want to see more Justin Shorter. We want to see more. I don't know. Do we need to see Quentin Morris or Reggie Gilliam? I don't know if I need to see anything from them. But that's it. Like I would be going in reverse that way and filling out, hey, we know we need those 48 guys to play. And no matter what, we need 8 of them to be guys who are going to make the roster. Who are the 8 that we need a little bit more from? Maybe it's, hey, Spencer, we want to have you have a really good drive to feel good about what we have going on and then get out of the game. Like I'm even fine if it's a confidence builder kind of thing.
They're not going to do it. They like him more than we do.
Correct. They'd like him a lot more than we do. But whatever it might be that we need to figure that out. Honestly, show me 2 quarters of David Quessenberry. Show me 2 quarters that maybe I'll feel a little bit better whether we need Josh Jones or Kelvin Beachum more than I think we do.
Sure.
So that's all I'm looking for is who are the guys who I'd like to see a little bit more. And then I'm going to be watching for practice squad stuff of who are the guys that have made a name that we want to go and make sure we try to get back. Because, of course, we're not going to get every single guy that we want back on the practice squad. I did this exercise with Chris Jenke. I know that our work, Chris and I did Joe Marino reference on his show. So far, at best, 10% of guys get claimed. Yeah. The Bills, in general, have had 13 guys claimed in 6 years. It's an average of 2 a year. We did have 3 last year. We have had a couple. I don't think it's automatic that no guys get claimed. This year, a good example will be somebody could have had a pretty good grade on Nick Broker or Alex Austin. I don't think either of them have any realistic shot of making our roster. We'd probably like them back on the practice squad. We might lose Nick Broker or Alex Austin. Those are the kind of guys who get claimed. Right now, I would say Ryan Van Denmark, just because of how desperate people are for tackles, he's the kind of guy that you probably can't waive an offensive tackle who's played pretty well without worrying about getting claimed. Now, it might be a necessary evil. We might need to and be like, hey, we're just going to hope because we can't keep everybody and we might lose somebody. But those positions, edge rushers, offensive tackles, some of those tougher premium positions, those are the ones that get claimed. And we just got to try to do what we can. But in general, way fewer guys get claimed than what we think. It's never the fan favorite receiver or the fan favorite running back because all of those guys have. And even last year, Isaiah Hodgins didn't get claimed until like week 8 when both the Bills and the Giants had a whole bunch of injuries. That's when he got claimed. Luke Tenuta and a handful of other guys did last year.
And there isn't a Bills fan on the planet right now that's missing Rashad Wildgoose.
Correct.
Right. Like we have to also wrap our heads around like how excited you get when you draft these guys in that summer, like the Brandon Riley stuff got out of control, but the league didn't miss Brandon Riley. Like these guys are who they are. They're at the bottom of the roster for a reason. No, all respect to them. The huge grind, nothing against them. It's the fans that try to make it like, oh my God, we can't lose this guy. You won't lose sleep and nothing's going to change about the 2023 Bills season.
Yeah. Yep. So I'm looking forward to another healthy week. I'm looking forward to everything there. Next week, we are going to be diving into our 53-man cut down, getting ready. And the week after, we are going to have a Bills, a Jets guest on going in to be able to preview Bills Jets for the
Connor
season
Rogers
opener.
Coming
it's absolutely crazy, Connor.
The show.
Jumping in there. It's just crazy that we're that close to where everything is.
It's kind of crazy that Connor keeps coming to talk to us. Like he's like legit famous now. He's like a big deal, and he hangs out with us.
It's crazy. I can't believe it.
Maybe we're cooler than we think.
I like
No,
to pretend
no,
so.
that can't
I
be.
tell myself all the time I'm really cool. I'm not. I'm really old, and not hip. And
Lame, super lame.
I'm really lame, but that's fine. So there's 119 people listening to two old lame guys right now. Before you guys log off, do us a favor, hit that like button. It's how the internet works. That's how you give somebody a referral, how you let them know. If you've enjoyed listening to us for the last hour, before you take off, all you have to do is press the button. It's awesome that if you're at the post office and you see a person in a Bills gear, you ask them, oh, do you listen to the Cover One Buffalo podcast? You should check it out. That would be cool too, but you don't need to. All you got to do is press the like button. That is today's version of word of mouth. That's how you let people know that you're telling YouTube, you should tell other people about this. Press that button on your way out. It would mean the world to us.
Yep. And comment. If you don't like us, just come
Tell
me
us
why.
the worst things we said in the show today.
So,
And you want to know what? Aaron and I are actually pretty good about answering all of them. So if you say something and tell me I am an idiot, I will yell at you and tell you, oh, yeah, here's why I'm not.
And
I might be an idiot, but that's not why I'm an idiot. And here's why.
And I don't always check it, but if you go on to YouTube and call me an idiot, Greg will make sure that I see it.
I will immediately show Aaron for sure. For sure. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you for our awesome producer, Chris Kepner, showing all the comments here tonight. Thank you for everybody here in the chat. You guys have been great. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn, I am Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to the Cover One Buffalo podcast, and we are out.